Okay, welcome to another episode of the Hot Take. We'll just show us. There we are. Welcome. So this is our kind of review discussion piece, and today we're going to be talking about Control Ultimate Edition. Obviously you've got myself, Ben, obviously joined by my regular partner in crime, Cash. This is I really think what to introduce you as there. This is my other half.
I think that's probably the best way to describe me, knowing me for this long.
This is my other half, Cash. Obviously, we've been playing Control Ultimate Edition. Control being a third-person action-adventure kind of shooter, third-person shooter created by Remedy, of Max Payne fame, of Alan Wake fame, of Quantum Break infamy, maybe fair to say. Quite a well-respected developer, not somebody I've played a lot of their games. I loved Max Payne, but that is probably the limit of it. I played Max Payne, didn't play much of Max Payne 2, played Max Payne 3, but that's Rockstar, so that doesn't really count. And Control is their latest game. Originally came out in 2019 for now what I am declaring as old consoles, PlayStation 4, Xbox One. There was a weird cloud version for the Switch that released, and of course there's PC as well. One of the first games to hit the market, or one of the big games to hit the market that used ray tracing as a kind of foundational level technology and really embraced that. And the Ultimate Edition has now come to next generation consoles, or current consoles, in the PlayStation 5 and Xbox One Series X and S, which is still a terrible name. And I never played this game when it came out. It kind of passed me by. I had heard very good things about it, but it really did just pass me by. I know. Did you play it when it originally came out?
No, I didn't. Same as you. I heard great things. It looked very Quantum Break to me. It didn't look very much like Max Payne or Alan Wake to me. I played all three Max Paynes. Played the hell out of 2 actually. I knew that game. I probably still know it very well. Used to do speed runs back in the good old days.
A lot of people say that's the best one.
Yeah, I really loved it, enjoyed it. And then I heard about this game, heard some good things, saw some gameplay, thought it was okay. And then again, like you say, Remedy always pretty well known for their narrative as well as storytelling. And I thought it might be good to pick up, but like you say, never got around to it. And then Mr. Shu Yoshida, I guess, or whoever was in Sony, thought maybe it's a good idea to try it out, gave it for free as a very late Christmas present, and here we are talking about it a few weeks later.
So yeah, we've both been playing the Ultimate Edition on PlayStation. You've been on PlayStation 4, I've been on PS5. So we've probably got, I imagine we've got very different experiences when it comes to the performance and the technical aspects of this game.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to compare, definitely.
I've got a few thoughts that we'll get into in a bit around the technical options that are available in this game actually. Control Ultimate Edition has had a strange, probably quite heated journey to release. I think it was meant to come out before Christmas originally, and then it got pushed into 2021. And it, like you mentioned before, it's a free PlayStation Plus game for the month of February, which is a pleasant surprise on my part, because again, this game passed me by, and it's just one I've never picked up, and this really did prompt me to start playing it. I know a lot of people were upset by that late announcement, because I know quite a few people had seemed to get this for Christmas as a bit of a gift on the proviso that, the update will be out in a couple of weeks, so I'll get it for Christmas and we'll wait. My wife did exactly that. She got it from her brother for Christmas. Got the Ultimate Edition, and that's why there's maybe a bit of kind of friction around this Ultimate Edition. But she got the Ultimate Edition for PS4, held off playing it. It's because next gen update around the corner, and I'll get it because I've got the Ultimate Edition, and then it was free. So we've got a nice coaster, a nice Control themed coaster in the house. The reason I say it's kind of a bit of a contentious release is because there's a lot of hoo-ha. Obviously, you mentioned before, Control came out in 2019 on all platforms. Now, to get this Ultimate Edition for nothing, before PlayStation Plus was a thing, or you're on another platform, 505 Games, who are the guys who are publishing this, Remedy, the developers, 505 are the publishers, they basically came out and said, in order to get the next gen upgrade for free, you will have to have purchased the Ultimate Edition of the original release. So that is basically the base game and the Season Pass at the time. The Season Pass has since basically received 2 bits of DLC, the Foundation and the AWE. So yeah, I think a lot of people were pissed off because that also kind of locked out people who had bought the base game of Control and then bought the DLC separately. And yeah, I think there's just been a lot of upset around this. I do think I can't remember the details because this happened before Christmas. But I think 505 did rescind a little bit and did free things up a little bit more, but it's still not as
Yeah, I think I was looking at this on the subreddit. I mean, once I finished the game and I enjoyed it, first thing you do is look at the memes on the subreddit and see what other people think. Just try and confirm that own bias that you have. And one of the top posts was how they had inadvertently, I think, activated the Control Ultimate Edition upgrade for kind of regular users. So it's almost like a switch had been flipped, and then they kind of cottoned on that. It's not really kind of an Ultimate Edition thing that has to be developed separately or packaged separately. You could just literally flip a switch for the users. So I'm not sure where it is at the moment, but it was very, very kind of hot topic.
Yeah, there was a lot of scuttlebutt about this kind of before Christmas, and again, this is not something I intended to buy, and I think that all the scuttlebutt about it kind of put me off further. It was kind of like, oh, I'll just not fucking bother. I'll wait for a sale on PSN or something.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think I don't tend to get games and DLCs. I'll get the base game and I'll think, you know what, that's good. I'll get the DLC. And Ultimate Editions, because they're usually repackaged back at the full price. So if Control was maybe £20 in the shops, it would have been back to, towards £45. And you just kind of think, I'll just give it a miss. So yeah, it's a interesting turn of events that kind of led to us having this.
Yeah.
So yeah, it works out quite well.
It's a goddamn shame that there's so much drama around this pre-release, and I also think it's a shame that I don't feel like Control was a game that was widely played by the masses. I feel like it did all right, and I feel like it made money, but I certainly don't feel like it was a big title in 2019. I'm going to put it this way: neither of us played it.
I mean, it won Game of the Year as well, I think, at the 2020 Game Awards. And I think I only just kind of realized after I finished playing and looked into it, I was like, oh, wow, this won Game of the Year, and still didn't register very high on my radar. I'm just trying to think what else I was playing the past couple of years. But yeah, I think it's probably very underrated, very overlooked, and hopefully we can change that. And hopefully PlayStation Plus, which is a good platform for doing that, can change that as well.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think, I mean, not beating around the bush, I think this game's fucking great. Quite frankly, I really like this game. It surprised me how much I liked it. Before we started recording, I kind of said I've been maybe stuck in a little bit of a rut. Kind of got the PS5 and played a lot on that, but after that initial wave, there's not been a lot that's kind of grabbed me. Astro Bot was great and all the rest of it, and there's not been a lot that I wanted to jump into and really kind of get to grips with and really kind of consume and enjoy for what it was. A lot of it felt like almost kind of checklisty type things. Get it, play through it as quickly as possible, and move on to the next thing. And that's not to say the stuff I've been playing is bad, but it has been a little bit. I mean, I picked up Devil May Cry 5 Special Edition, and I rattled through that in a week, and I was like, right, I'm done, and put it down and just haven't gone back to it. Hitman, which we talked about the other week, and I'm trying to do something with the video that we did for that, although I think I've fucked it up and it might be beyond repair, but we'll see. But that was like the first type of thing that came out, and that I was like, oh, this is really fucking good, actually. And then this is probably even more so. I liked Hitman, and I really liked Hitman, and certainly recommend that, and I hope I can cover the video at some point. But
I was going to say, in the video that you sabotaged, we said you could pick up and play. It's not something you have to kind of invest a lot of time in on kind of keep playing for weeks before you get sick of it. And there's always the Hitman 1 and Hitman 2 stuff to go back to. And I've got VR on PlayStation 4, and you could get the PS4 version and get the compatibility with your VR headset as well. So it's I'm not playing Hitman 3 all too much either, much less than where I was kind of last week or so. But I know in a few months' time, I'll pick it up and be like, you know what, I'm just going to this level again, or I'm going to try this again.
That was kind of where we landed on that as well, wasn't it? Really good experience to play through, and we will come back to it in our own kind of leisurely way and dip in.
Yeah, that's a TLDR. I don't need to upload the video.
Yeah, that's it. I've saved myself a lot of hours of editing there. But yeah, Control. I really like this game. I think it's really fucking good. Like, I surprised myself how much I did end up enjoying it. I mean, just to kind of summarize what it is, we're trying to be spoiler free for now. We will dip into spoilers later because you were saying there's a lot to cover and a lot to talk about. But effectively, you play Jessie Faden, a young woman who is drawn to a building in New York called the Oldest House. It's a bit of a strange location that seems to go largely unnoticed by the masses, despite being in the middle of Manhattan, I'm assuming. It kind of says New York, but I'm assuming it's Manhattan. And when she enters there, she finds it's the home for a shady government organisation called the Federal Bureau of Control. Except when she enters the building, nobody is around, and that leads her on to kind of down the rabbit hole almost around this mysterious place and this mysterious organisation, trying to unravel what is going on. And that is me being really cagey about the details of this story, I think. But there's a lot, there's a few different threads going on, and yeah, it's basically Jesse Faden kind of unraveling the mystery of the oldest house. Fair to say this is a Metroidvania.
Yeah, I think that's probably a good way of putting it.
Yeah, I was kind of think of. I was trying to think, how do you sum up a Metroidvania for somebody who doesn't know it? And the way I always think about them is, it's an open world that is designed in such a way that it impedes your progress, depending on like the abilities and equipment that you have, and you generally get those through the more linear story that kind of weaves its way through this open world. Does that follow?
Yeah.
I was trying to like talk myself through it. Does that follow? Is that too fucking obtuse? But yeah, and that's very much it. Like the oldest house is kind of just there all the time. The scope of it and the complexity of it kind of opens up as you progress through the game, get more abilities, get key cards to open certain doors, etc. And I think that's something as well. This is a third-person shooter. But it is very focused on special abilities that you get, and the weapons themselves that you use are strangely supernatural and unusual. There's no reload, there's no ammo count. It's all based on like a wait and recharge kind of system, like Mass Effect 1, and it's cooldown.
Yeah, it's like a cooldown. Yeah, I was forever tapping square and things to try and reload, and just wasn't having it. It's like, why are you reloading? Reload faster. And yeah, you just have to wait for the cooldown to reset, and on you go. And it's a good way to kind of handle the combat, because you have two different sets of abilities. You've got the standard rooting, tooting, shooting, and then you've got kind of the staple of the control, which is the telekinetic abilities.
Yeah.
And they kind of play into well, because you kind of manage. It's like a mana control system and a stamina control system. So mana is like your magic and stuff, and then stamina is kind of your melee or earthly abilities. And it's about kind of switching between them or using one sparingly depending on the situation.
Yeah, and I must admit, I found this game very hard to start with, but as you pick up the first few abilities, it really opens out, and the combat is really, really fun. Especially, it always seems to get better as well as the game fleshes things out.
Yeah, I agree. I really had a lot of fun with the combat. Starts off strange, like you say, and like you said, with the reload mechanics. And then it starts off giving you kind of a little bit of abilities here and there. And then as you kind of progress through the story, progress through the missions, you get additional stuff to play around with. And you can change different scenarios. And even when you're backtracking and stuff, you kind of run into old enemies and try those new abilities again, or you can try kind of another way of doing things. So it keeps things fresh. I think that's a very hard thing to do for a game. Especially this day and age. I think it does it very well.
Yeah, it really does, and there's a surprising amount of variety in the enemies, despite everything in this game is very self-contained. I mean, you are in this kind of Art Deco brutalist office block. It's a very kind of stereotypical shady government agency from the Cold War era kind of vibe to it. But I think there's a lot of variety in enemies and also the environments themselves. The oldest house is one of the coolest kind of ideas for a level, like an area game.
A game and a setting, yeah.
It's
a really interesting location for a game, and it's all within really this building.
Yeah.
And there's kind of nuances to that, but yeah, it all takes place in here. And the way kind of this narrative is told, and the way that we kind of play the game and go through the different levels, and you can, as you're running through a corridor, there's pipes on this kind of the walls. You can rip them out and play them, or got fire extinguishers in places, and
there's a lot of physics in this game, like a shit ton of physics. Like you say, like everything that's everything that is even nailed down can be generally grabbed through one of your primary abilities, and I think you can see it on a lot of the footage that I've got running in the background here, but are a telekinetic grab and throw, and you can basically just rip this shit out of this building. Like if you're looking at anything that's like desks, pipes, railings, anything that's lying around will be grabbed. And if there's nothing obvious to grab, you'll start tearing chunks out the wall and the floor and just hurling concrete bricks at people. And it's all quite dynamic and all quite fluid. It doesn't feel like you're just picking an endless kind of chunk, endless. You are, but it doesn't feel like you're picking endless chunks out of the wall and throwing them. They do break away and leave a gap, and there's like a lot of physics modeling in this game. Like I mentioned before, I'm playing on PlayStation 5 and you're playing on PlayStation 4. But one of the complaints I always heard about on previous gen consoles was this game runs like shit, like sub 30 frames. And I think largely is that because of the physics going on in this game.
I mean, it's interesting, yeah. So, like you mentioned, there's a lot of physics running around. And one of the tech demos I remember at the beginning of the PlayStation 4 era was, I think Mr. Cerny, Matt Cerny, coming out and saying, "Oh, PlayStation 4 can render 1,000,000 particles all at once," and it was like a big drop of knack. I think it was 1,000,000 things coming down, and that was one of the big, I guess, sticking points that I remember from it. And Control, with its kind of physics engine and the way you move things, like you say, it struggles a lot. It didn't really affect my gameplay all too much, but there were times where it went way below, I would say 10 frames, 5 frames. It kind of almost stalled to a point. So yeah, there were times where it got a little bit kind of lagtastic. But generally it was okay. I was running through offices and kind of blowing filing cabinets and desks and computers around, and it was kind of doing it okay. But I could imagine looking at it, I just thought, there's a lot of, I guess, maybe ambience or a lot of subtlety to these effects. And I'm sure on PC, PS5, next-gen consoles, it would have a lot more of that, and it would kind of increase the kind of look of it, the feel of it, and just enhance that experience a bit more. So yeah, I didn't detract from it, but I would agree that it's probably, the worst place to play it on old-gen consoles.
Yeah, I mean, that's a complaint I heard about it when it originally came out, and maybe one of the reasons why I didn't play it. I mean, I'm quite happy to play games at 30 frames if that's what they come in, and it is what it is, and all the rest of it. But I mean, I played on, but I say maybe that's one of the reasons why I didn't pick it up. Is at the time it was like, if it runs badly, maybe I'll wait. Maybe I will get it on PC when I get a better PC. But PS5. I mean, this is called the Ultimate Edition. I would argue that even the next-gen console versions are not the Ultimate Edition. There are two modes that you can run in next-gen consoles. There are, I may be paraphrasing these, but they're effectively boiled down to performance or graphics. Performance is pretty much the game, ray tracing turned off, but running at I don't think it runs at 4K, but it runs at like something like 1440p. It's like one of those half-step resolutions that looks pretty damn good regardless. But it runs at a solid, pretty lock-solid 60 frames a second, and that's what I played it in. And it looks good as a result. And like you mentioned before, there's a lot of subtle effects. This game is fucking gorgeous. There's like a fantastic use of lighting, and there's just everything looks just amazing. There's a lot of detail in such a kind of the old house is such a well-crafted space from like every kind of standpoint, from a kind of visual standpoint, from a variety standpoint, how it all links together, etc. And yeah, it looks really goddamn good, this game. So yeah, I played it in 60 on the PS5. I did the performance mode. The graphics mode, effectively, I don't know if it jacks up the resolution at all, but it turns up the graphical effects. But what it does do in particular is it turns ray tracing on. And I mentioned just before that this is one of the first kind of major retail titles to use ray tracing for those who've got ray tracing capable hardware. And it's shit. It's really, really bad in this implementation. The PS5 version that I played in graphics mode is shit, and I assume the Xbox Series X isn't much better, and I've not heard anyone say it's particularly good, but it knocks the frame rate back down to 30. Except it doesn't feel like even 30. It feels like your character animates in 30, but everything else is operating at almost like 20 or below frames. There's this weird, like,
crazy,
disenfranchised stutter between the player character and everything else, and it's hard to put your finger on it, to be honest. I've seen nothing like it, but you turn it on, you're like, yeah, wow, ray tracing, it looks great. But as soon as you move the camera, it just stutters and blurs, and it looks bad. It looks just outright fucking busted. to the point where I was like, I don't really, if this is what I had to play the game, like I would not want to play this game. It looks terrible.
We'll not be able to play it all.
So
Gosh.
I don't think this is the Ultimate Edition. I still think you're probably best off playing this in a PC with like a 20 series or a 30. Heaven forbid you're able to get a 30 series card in it. Because that'll run at 60 with ray tracing and all the bells and whistles, and yeah, you Christ, that game would look so good, because when this is on performance mode on PlayStation 5, it still looks great. But I still, having played Spider-Man Miles Morales, which has very nice ray tracing implementation as well, I really wanted to see what ray tracing looked like in this game, but it's not even that I'm sacrificing it back down to like 30 that just plays well. It just felt bad. It just feels off and wrong, and there's something that goes beyond.
There's too much. There's too much of a give up. Like you're giving up way too much just for the sake of having like mirrors and nice reflections and stuff. Like,
yeah, and it's a shame because
yeah, exactly. I was going to say it's disappointing because, like you said before, the lighting is amazing. Some of the environments are really effing cool.
Well, this being an office
and I'd love
block
to kind of
with
go back on the
with like lots of shiny
exactly.
surfaces. My God, this is like, I mean, this would be amazing, but yeah, you just can't enjoy it. It's just not good at all. So yeah, like as I said, the performance great, fantastic version, 60 locked, 60 good, like, you know, not quite 4K resolution, but close enough to that you wouldn't ever fucking notice. Anything beyond it, graphics mode is absolutely terrible, embarrassingly so, which is a shame, because as I say, I genuinely love this game. I really strongly have really strong positive feelings for it. It's cool as hell.
Yeah.
Like you say, the gameplay, it starts off good, but gets to the point where it's great. I would say by the time you've got a lot of mix of powers and you've got like run of the kind of overarching level, I think the old house is a great setting. And I think the story is really interesting. Because obviously PlayStation Plus, I was trying to sell this to a couple of friends, and I was like, how do you even describe this game? And I think I landed on like, it's the X-Files made by the guys who made Max Payne.
Yeah, I think that's probably not a bad comparison. That's probably not a bad way of saying it.
I was trying to think.
It definitely feels like Twilight Zone or Outer Limits, that kind of thing. And yeah, FBI and X-Files is probably the best place for it.
Yeah, I was trying to like maybe a bit of Twin Peaks in there, maybe kind of. Yeah, I was trying to think of like, what does this really compare to? And I think I don't know if it's based on this at all, but there's that kind of internet, it's not meme type thing, but it's like that internet kind of thing called, is it SCP, where it's like all the different weird kind
all
of
the hidden vaults and the weird myths and monsters and legends of underground and conspiracies and stuff. Yeah, it's almost like a vault full of unknown things and undisclosed things and classified things.
It's like that, probably, it's like that kind of science fiction, like that kind of old magic meets kind of 1950s Americana.
Yeah.
That's the best thing. Yeah, it's a really strange genre. I don't know if it's got a name necessarily, but it's one of those kind of things, and it's cool as hell. Yeah, I like this is when you're playing this game in performance mode, it works very well. It plays very good. I think it's got one of the coolest, more interesting settings in this game. I mean, you mentioned before, I can't remember if this was before we started recording or not, but you mentioned that there's like a lot of collectibles. I think it was actually, because we were talking about kind of time to beat and stuff like that and how quickly we got through it. But there's a shit ton of collectibles in this game that are just office documents lying around. But they are awesome,
and it's a mixture of documents. There's a mixture of stuff. So there's some stuff which is kind of mandatory if you want to go into the law and understand kind of the background of the characters and stuff. And then there's other things where it's just office banter between two people. It's just shit posting basically on an office level.
There's all sorts of
and
weird stuff.
There's other bits. There's music and other kind of collectibles as well. But there's a metric ton of it. Oh my god, yeah.
There's something like 240
it almost seems never ending
to collect. Luckily, the trophy only requires you to collect 120 of those on PlayStation.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, it's just bureaucracy, isn't it? Just forms and documents and everything's a memorandum, and anything you ever do has to be written down and signed off and stuff. It's just that in a game. It's it's pretty incredible how
It's
I'd love to
great.
know how they've kind of signed off each document and how they managed to. Okay, this one, you team, you do this. You team, you do this. It just, yeah,
It's really funny because it is that,
mental.
like you say, it is that realistic bureaucracy, but it's boring, mundane bureaucracy around the fantastical and the mystical, and it's just this weird mashup of like they've boiled down these phenomena to like their kind of most kind of mundane method of like how to control them, how to keep them under wraps, and how to like police them. But there's like it just kind of there's a great sense of world building in this game. Like quite early on in the game, you get a memo that says like, okay, you're not allowed to bring any of these items into the bureau, and it's kind of like these are all symbols that like in the collective consciousness of humanity represent something, and that can cause problems when you enter the oldest house. So it's like you're not allowed to bring paper clips in or anything with a wireless signal or like just loads of random items, and it's like
Yeah.
that's all banned contraband. And there's like you see items around the oldest house as well. Like there's one bit where there's kind of like vaults or cages, almost like observation cages, where there'll be like a glass pane, almost like a Hannibal Lecter-esque cage. And then there'll be like a platform with an item on it and a camera facing the item, like always watching it. And quite early in the game, there's a rubber duck sitting there, and like there's a tape recorder next to it, and you'll press the tape recorder, and it's basically this kind of dictaphone recording from a scientist trying to figure out what this duck does. They know it's what they call like an object of power. I think they refer them as.
Yeah, there's two types. There's object of power, and then an altered item or an altered.
I could not remember what the second one was called when before we came on. I was like, objects of power, and what's the other one? Yeah, it's altered item. Yeah, so like, and it's just this very very scientific approach to experiment, trying to find out what does this duck do, and it's just this
a rubber duck, yeah.
Yeah, and it's just this woman going, okay, then we're going to first burn it. No response. We're now going to introduce a number of liquids to it, ranging on the pH scale from 0 to, is it 14 it goes up to? And it's to say like this.
Yes.
Okay, then no response. And now I'm going to attempt to communicate with it. Quack, if you can hear me. And this is like this really long pause. And then she just signs off like, tests inconclusive. We must prepare more tests, and it just stops dead. And it's just like, and you just look at this rubber duck sitting in this cage, and it's like nobody has still figured out what's going on with this thing, despite it having been there for probably a long time.
There, yeah.
Yeah, there's all sorts of random shit like that, and it's great. There's a lot of good stuff. A lot of background to things as well. Like you encounter characters or different bits and pieces, and there's a lot of memos that kind of talk about
fill in the blanks and stuff. Yeah, I mean, if you need that information, it's there. A lot of the documents are kind of I guess classified, so there's kind of blank stuff out, so they'll mention something that's important and it's redacted, or they'll mention the name and half of it's redacted, so you don't know the surname of certain people and things like that. But yeah, if you want to know a bit more about kind of, I guess, the attitudes and values of people, it's kind of, there's examples of it in the document, and it's not kind of direct, it's never usually first person, although there are some kind of, memos to and forward. There's always like people commenting on them, this person came in and said this, and we need to focus on this or prioritize this, and we need to change our efforts on this, and it builds up a picture. It does start to work, and it isn't kind of all the memos that are really important for a character are just in this one character's place, or are just in this one area. They're all spread out kind of almost everywhere, because depending on who the character is, they've had kind of the fingers or their influences in many, many different sectors, or as you come to know in the game, departments.
Yes, the departments, yeah. Yeah, it's great. The world building's great, and Remedy have I think a history of using live actors in abstract kind of ways, and there's a lot of like found footage in this game, primarily of one of the leads of the Federal Bureau of Control. Is it Dr. Darling, head of research?
Dr. Darling, yep. Casper Darling.
Casper Darling, that's it. And he's just this kind of like scientist guy in a lab coat and a dicky bow tie, and there's loads of film projectors and videos with him that are explaining certain aspects, and they're like infomercials, and there's a lot of like awkward cuts left in where he's just standing there looking at the camera awkwardly.
To me, he was the Vault Boy from kind of Fallout. The Vault Tech boy, the dove head.
Little mascot.
To me, that's kind of how he was because, yeah, whenever you have an infomercial or by the way, remember this, it's always kind of the Pit Boy coming up and doing that, and it was always Casper Darling, like, by the way, welcome to the Federal Bureau of Control, and I'm Casper Darling, and always this weird and wacky and wonderful kind of introductions. Yeah, that's the takeaway I took from him. Yeah,
he seems like he's super excited to just be like researching all this wonderful weird stuff. Like he's always upbeat and like he's the public face. I say public. He's like that kind of infomercial face.
He's never taken a day off that job in his life. You can tell. He lives it.
And he's like a huge kind of counterpoint to Director Trench, who's this other kind of far more serious and far kind of grimmer presence throughout the game. And yeah, it's just really, really cool, really, between the different. But they're all like live action kind of actors doing video and stuff like that, and
yeah,
it's cool.
I think it's really well done.
Yeah.
Like you said, they used it in a lot of their games. Max Payne 2 is one that sticks out. There was some of it in Max Payne 3. There was a lot of it in I think Quantum Theory was the other one, and not too sure about Quantum Break. Sorry, not Quantum Break. Sorry.
Well, it didn't have a TV show.
Yeah.
But I never got into that at all. That was an Xbox One launch, and I was right off that train when that came along.
Yep. And then there was Alan Wake. I think Alan Wake had some, but I don't know too much about Alan Wake. But this continues it. There's a lot of old school projectors and video files and things like that playing, and they're kind of repeating messages or kind of updates to experiments and in conclusion, this kind of thing like that. So. And I think, which kind of leads me on to another point, the sound is done really well. Now, when I say the sound, I mean there isn't too much music in this game.
It's very ambient, like a lot of
ambient music,
mood music,
a lot of noises. I was playing this with the headphones, and a lot of the times I was kind of, I mean, we'll get into it a little bit more in the story, but I was feeling quite uneasy, quite kind of on the edge.
It's funny actually you say that, because I said to my wife, like, my wife will not watch horror movies, she will not play horror games, and I was like, I don't know if you're gonna like Control, because it's not a horror game, but it's pretty damn creepy, like, and unsettling.
I think if they put a little bit more, if they wanted to, they could flip a few more switches and made this like a really disturbing horror game. Like you could see, I was anticipating a lot of things to happen that never did. And it's not a disappointment to say, it's just, I just thought, this is going to scare the crap out of me. I'm going to go here and something's going to happen. It just never did, but you could just see like it's laid the foundations or something. And it's almost like maybe they toyed with that idea. And they thought maybe actually we'll just kind of leave as is.
It's not scary like in the boo, I'm jumping out at you, or something's going to get you. It's like, it's that kind of like weird kind of like everything's like the universe is so much bigger, and there's things out there that are so much wackier and weird.
It's very Lovecraftian. I mean, the idea of when you look at Cthulhu, it just seems ridiculous, but then you understand the lore and the story behind Cthulhu, and that is really frightening. Just kind of what Cthulhu represents and kind of how he came to be on Earth and where his kind of origins come from and beings like him.
It makes
it's
sense
very Lovecraftian and like very cosmic.
Oh yes, it is that, and like, it is that Lovecraftian kind of underbelly laid on top of that modern Americana kind of surface, and then the two that meet, and the kind of it's almost like the juxtaposition between the two of them. It's that very clinical, very modern, very technology driven kind of, there's no place for the old world
very
here.
Logical, very kind of exactly very logical, very black, very white. Everything's in this pile, or this pile has to be filed under this order, and then you've got kind of cosmic entities that just turn everything upside down, quite literally. And
what I really liked about this game as well is obviously there's the kind of central threat, but it teases and as the game progresses, has you confront other major threats and other major kind of plot points around this. I mean, like there's the whole central threat, but then there's like the backdrop of like the astral plane. There's the kind of I think in the back third of the game, I would say there's like the secondary threat of the mold, without saying too much more. But these are all like, you could, like, I was playing it, I was like, you know what's, this is really cool. Any one of these things could have been the only plot point of this game, and you could have saved all this other shit for a sequel or DLC. But no, it kind of layers it on, and it's almost like you're kind of seeing the tip of the spear for these other lesser plot points. I'd even argue
Yeah.
the main threat you don't really ever know what it is or know how much of it you see, and it's just like this big threat that you're fighting against. It's all very kind of at arm's length. You only see what you see. You don't ever get a picture of you get an idea of the wider picture, and it's in keeping with that kind of fear of the unknown. And this bureau is just trying to
Yeah.
it feels like the Bureau of Control, that their whole function is they're just propped up against the door, stopping it swinging wide open and letting all this shit come piling on in, and they're just doing their best to manage
I think
it.
that's pretty much Throughout the game, there's like, if the oldest house falls or if the Federal Bureau of Control falls, then kind of it's a given that the world is going to fall and the world is going to collapse into an entity or collapse into a different plane or a different dimension or something. So yeah, it's like you say, they're like the Ghostbusters essentially.
Pretty much, yeah. It's a strange game because like in terms of like how it plays and everything, like I don't think I've got a lot more to say. As I say, I think it's a really competent third-person shooter that's further augmented and improved by the abilities that you get, which are really cool, especially as you collect more of them. And again, in the footage that's running in the background, I think they've probably shown quite a few off. You get things like you get the telekinetic grab. You can control weakened enemies. You can levitate eventually. Like these are all things you pick up over the course of the game, and they just augment your abilities as well as unlocking means to progress to new areas of the oldest house. I think as well, one thing that I'd say as well is in terms of kind of how it plays, this game's more about how it makes you feel and the atmosphere than how it plays moment to moment. I would say. I think this is a really competent third person shooter that's made better with its powers. I think it's a really really solid Metroidvania, but it's the setting, the world building, and the intrigue it teases throughout all that really makes it stand out, and I think it's fucking great. But I think on top of that, it's got one of the coolest bits in a game I've played for a long ass time. I'll not really spoil it because I think it's definitely worth finding for yourself, but just say Ashtray Maze.
Yeah, that was really good. Nice
It's
little montage.
yeah, it was just wild that it's a complete inverse of the tone of the rest of the game.
Yeah, and I mean, it kind of keeps the tone of the game in one sense, and then I mean the other sense is we talked about the sound design and the sound choice. I think I will have to go back and maybe talk about it a bit more, but I think the way they changed the sound and to trigger at certain points, and I think it probably looped at certain points as well, made it so everyone kind of has more or less the same experience, even if you kind of were to walk through it, run through it, speed run through it or something. It was a really really fucking cool.
I mean, is anything I suppose we can probably move on to spoiler territory at this stage.
I'll kind of, before we do, I'll kind of agree with you. Combat was really fantastic. Started off well and carried on, got even better. The abilities that you have never kind of seem overpowered. They always seem to give you an edge. So you're never kind of like a super soldier at the end of it. You're always kind of, it gives you an edge over the enemies, but the enemies can always, win if you don't kind of keep on toes.
I died a lot in this game through carelessness, through just bad luck sometimes. Enemies are dangerous.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's with me. I'd like to know kind of your views on this, but I was kind of upgrading my health, but I never felt like that was worth it. If I could go back now, I probably wouldn't upgrade my health because I never had a time where I was one-shotted and I died. It was always kind of a combination of things, but also it always seemed to be I would lose just as much health. So something at level 1 health took take half my health. If I went to level 10, call it always seemed to take that much percentage anyway. So I was kind of thought, what was the point of doing it?
I think it buys you a bit of breathing space, but yeah, you're right. You would almost get yourself that through just augmenting your abilities. Like one of the upgrades, there's an upgrade tree. That's something that you do. There's like increased levitation duration. That often saved me more than an extra 20% of health. Like, see, I never felt like my health got that much bigger in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, that's probably my only niggle. And I mean, sometimes the camera wasn't great, but it doesn't really take anything away from the game. But yeah, it's really well done. And I really enjoyed kind of the narrative, the storytelling, which I'm probably going to go into mine ever so shortly. A lot of the designs for kind of the characters, I think a lot of the characters are fantastic. There's a lot of characters from previous games. There's Max Payne in this, the guy who played Max Payne. There's Alan Wake in this, the guy who played Alan Wake. And Remedy have kind of been known for this kind of storytelling, and I think it's continued, and this would be a very solid sequel when it comes out. I'm kind of going to hedge my bets and say they probably will do a sequel to this direct one.
I would imagine surely they will.
Because what they've built up with this game, I just can't see it being a one-off.
It might not be a direct sequel, but surely they have now established the world, the Remedy shared universe.
The Remedyverse, like the MCU, essentially. Yeah. I mean, this is Shield, essentially.
Yeah, it kind of is. But like their wacky shit that they do. Something that has just come to mind actually that we haven't mentioned in terms of kind of gameplay and things like that is that we kind of there is an upgrade tree for all your different abilities. There are the ability to kind of purchase or craft additional upgrades to your weapons, different upgrade slots to the weapons that you get given, and you have like augmentation slots on for you as well. So you can kind of equip and customize your bonuses through various upgrades and augments, so you can get things that like 20% more health. Levitation costs less energy to use. You can use your telekinesis more before it runs out, type of thing. There's ways to customize to your playstyle that enhances things, which is quite nice. It's not significant, but it adds a little bit more depth to things, and we did just touch upon it, so I thought it was worth expanding.
And it gives you the option to restart. So if you didn't like this particular brand of gameplay, if you want to try another, just pay some in-game currency and then respec and restart. And I really liked it.
Something else that the game does, and I always felt like they were a little bit at odds for what this game was, but you will get like is it board countermeasures? I think they're called. Oh, there's two things actually. There's board countermeasures, which are the kind of like little challenges that you can equip 3 of them at a time. You can see 5 at a time, but you can only equip 3 at a time. And they are like little challenges. It'll be like kill X amount of a certain enemy type in a certain location, or kill 25 enemies with this one, like with telekinesis or things like that. And I never felt like they ever gelled with what I was doing in the game. If I'm honest, it didn't really matter because they were just like little extra things, but it always felt like I had to go out of my way to accomplish them. In fact, I platinumed this, at least the main game, when I played through it. And the last thing I did was farm these board countermeasures, because you've got to do 25 to get the trophy for it. And I just ran around areas I'd previously cleared waiting for enemies to spawn, and so you can see 5 at a time, but you can equip 3 that are active. But if you don't like any, just equip them, discard them, another one will pop up. Do you like that one? Equip it and discard it. And it's this weird thing where I was like, why don't you just show me 20 and let me complete them all? Or better yet, have a compendium, which is like kill 10 of a basic soldier,
all of them,
kill 20, and it's like a tiered thing like that, and just let me do them as I go. I don't want to fanny on with this in the menus. I can't be bothered. The other thing as well that was probably a little bit more fun, but again kind of never felt like it gelled with what the game was, and it's kind of like it's very like driven narrative, and that was I can't remember what they're called exactly, but it's like emergency scenarios or something like that, where it would be like the executive mailroom is under attack. You've got to go and clear it. And I'm like, oh, all right, I'll do it, but I'm busy down.
There's a timer as well to try and egg you on,
like a real time 20-minute timer. So yeah, it's weird.
I don't know about you, Bushi. I thought I'm sure the postal guys will take care of this. I'll leave you to
it. It's the postal guys causing the problem.
Open one of the packages. I'm sure there'll be something inside you can use.
It's a bit of white powder. So it was just a bit weird that I didn't love those things, but I think that's probably exacerbated by the fact that I tried to platinum this game and had to do them. I did them after the fact. I didn't do them as part of the main playthrough, so you can ignore them if you want. But I mean, it sounds like we've got a similar opinion of this. That like it's a lot of fun to play. And it's the world building, the atmosphere that really sets it above. But I do think this is a genuinely pretty damn special game. It's cool. There's not many games like this, and it's good enough at everything it tries to do to make it pretty damn good across the board. It doesn't really have a huge amount of shortcomings. Those that it does have are easily overlooked.
Yeah, definitely.
So we've been reasonably cagey about spoilers, so I'm going to say spoilers now. We can talk quite freely about the story and the setting, because that's the definitely the more interesting part of this game. So maybe a bit more of an in-depth synopsis than what I give at the start of this, in that you play Jessie Faden, a young woman who has come to the Central Bureau of Control, the oldest house in New York. She has been drawn there by what turns out to be like a mysterious entity called Polaris that kind of like not possesses her, but like is her like companion, like
Guardian angel.
yeah.
Like a guardian angel or something, yeah.
And she has been drawn there because since she was involved with an incident in her hometown of Ordinary, um, where her and her brother were involved with an incident that the Federal Bureau of Control swept in, kind of resolved and kind of suppressed it and kind of kept it under wraps. But they took her brother away, and she's been kind of wandering America trying to find him ever since. And she believes he is in the oldest house now, and this Polaris seems to have drawn her there. She gets there to find nobody's around, and it ultimately turns out that the Federal Bureau of Control is under a strict, severe lockdown to prevent an evil entity that becomes known as the Hiss, because it's effectively this like it's this disembodied like red aura that it doesn't really have a physical presence, but she like Jessie describes it as a hissing noise that kind of invades your body and suppresses your thoughts and kind of takes over. So she calls it the Hiss, and then within 10 minutes everyone's calling it that. And basically every like half like 90% of the bureau has been taken over by the Hiss, and they've all been possessed and they're all run riot. The last remaining kind of 10-20% are all hiding in these vaults that are around these lockdown vaults around the oldest house. And she kind of wanders in and is trying to kind of unpick this fucking situation, but there's all sorts going on. There's a lot going on, and it's all very kind of like she's meant to be here type of thing. Polaris has brought her here for a reason.
Yeah.
It's always meant to be.
Well, yeah. I think he even says, like, I think you mentioned it, the building itself is always there, but it's never kind of ever approachable. I remember seeing a memo saying always question people that come in, because they shouldn't really be coming in. It's supposed to be really, really well hidden from the public.
There's like a checklist of approved questions, isn't there, that says like go
approved
through this
questions.
script.
Like, are you here to see anyone? And if anybody answers weirdly, then you take them to interrogation and find out a bit more about them and stuff like that. And it's like, there are no coincidences or something to that extent. Always question everything. Always be, concerned. So yeah, it's almost like Jessie was sent there at that specific time to kind of become the director and become the savior and fight back the Hiss. Because I mean, like you mentioned before, she was involved in an incident in Ordinary, and that was kind of, I guess, the origins of the Hiss, or the origins of how the Hiss kind of came to be at the Federal Bureau of Control as well.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned there as well, she becomes the director of the Bureau of Control. I mean, that's when you come into it, as I say, there's nobody there, you quickly meet the janitor of the Federal Bureau of Control, a rather strange, I'm going to say like Swedish, like Scandinavian guy, because Remedy are a Scandinavian
I think it's either Finnish or Swedish, I can't remember, but Remedy is Scandinavian, so yeah, Scandinavian's fine.
But he's like this strange oddball who he's like that kind of magical, mystical kind of like, I'm just the janitor, but I'm not really. And he kind of talks cryptically and directs you to like a job interview as you get there. He's like, "Oh, you're here for the janitor's assistant job? It's just take the lift up there." And you kind of quickly get embroiled. You find yourself into the director's office, and the director is Director Trench. As I mentioned before, he's like this kind of very kind of grim, very serious figure. But you find him dead on the floor of his office, seemingly having committed suicide. And after a strange, trippy experience, you find yourself having taken his mantle as the director, and he is now trying to contact you from beyond the grave to direct you. And one of the first missions you have is you've got to go and find this object of power called the Hotline, which is this like red phone with no. It's like an old kind of dialer phone.
It reminded me of the Hotline from Adam West Batman.
It's exactly that, but it's got like no dialing on it, but it's like a
no
one-way
buttons or
thing.
Anything. Yeah.
Something calls you on it, and like you got to go and get it so that Trench can speak to you from beyond, like into the astral plane. But so like the director runs the bureau, and it's not necessarily something that you progress into. You are almost chosen to be the director. It's like this kind of like prophesized position.
It's like Green Lantern almost, isn't it? If the last one
Yeah.
dies, the other one kind of has to get picked by the oldest house or the board, maybe one of them.
Well, yeah, I was going to say the board. They're this interesting little entity that the director might run the oldest house and might run the Federal Bureau of Control, but ultimately they seem to get their instructions or seem to get their guidance from this entity called the board, which is represented by an inverted black pyramid on a white background. There's a lot of iconography around that in Control. Like I'm looking at the front cover of it now, and it is on the front cover like there's like an inverted kind of triangle, and the board can speak to you through the hotline, and they kind of it feels you can't understand what they're saying. It's just like noise, but it's subtitled along the bottom, and all the words are always
It's almost like the
duplicate or triplicate.
Yeah. Well, I mentioned this to you before. Like you said, they don't speak kind of English or anything. It's all kind of spoken in your mind. It's almost kind of telepathically, and that's kind of how entities in different planes talk to each other. They don't use a voice. It's always kind of through kinesis or telekinesis, I should say. It's heavily implied that the extra dimensional and the kind of otherworldly as well. And the comparison I drew was to Arrival. The short story of Arrival is aliens land on Earth, and people of Earth and the governments of the Earth try to make contact with the aliens, decipher their language, teach our language to them, and then try to understand why they're here. And there's a lot of understanding that the languages that they use have multiple meanings. For example, one was weapon or tool. They didn't really understand the difference between a weapon or a tool, so it's kind of interchangeable. And there's a lot of interchangeable words when you talk to the board. Sorry, so they'll say do your best, and they'll say / your greatest, or / accomplish what you can, or something like that. So there's always kind of different meanings to it. There isn't kind of a word fitting in your mind for what they want you to do, but there's kind of a thesaurus or a combination of words where you could do.
See, I took it in a slightly different way in that the board, I took it as that rather than a single entity, the board is actually made up of multiple entities that are all almost like a council of Lovecraftian beings. And I think that's kind of reinforced a little bit because about halfway through the game, you encounter a object of power or an altered item. I can't remember. I think it's an altered item. That's a fridge that must always be watched, otherwise something bad happens. And you come across a guy who's been there for like 2 days while this lockdown's happening, and he's just had to stare at this fridge and he's panicking. And there's this whole like scenario with it, but you kind of get dragged into the astral plane by this fridge, and you meet this very Lovecraftian being called Former, and he's basically a giant kind of squid monster with a big eye, and the board basically tells you like, don't believe what he tells you. He's lying. He's not one of us anymore.
Yep.
And it's almost as
don't listen to him. Yep.
Yeah, it's almost as if he's used to be part of the board, and for whatever reason he's had a bit of a falling out with them and had to leave that group, and he's trying to get revenge on them or stop them doing something. Because I never get the impression that the board is necessarily a force of good. They are just a force.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, they're not really running the joint. They're almost there as guidance, and they're almost kind of the interpreters, or they'll kind of help you understand the astral plane and the otherworldly things that go on. But they have their own agenda, and it's not always to your kind of. I mean, they don't always run parallel to Jesse's, and even in the DLC as well. You kind of go against them to an extent. Any Former helps you.
Oh really? I haven't played the DLC, but
I do apologize.
No, it's fine. I mean,
we did say spoilers.
No, it's fine. It's more just because I tried to get the platinum, and I probably should have played it. But no, I knew that that's the first DLC, isn't it? The Foundation that delves into the kind of history of the oldest house. Yeah. And gets a bit more into the Lovecraftian.
There's a bit more about the board and Former. I won't say too much, but yeah, it's really interesting, kind of the relationship between the two, and kind of how Jessie sees herself like not really aligned with either of them. She's only kind of in it for the Federal Bureau of Control and nobody else, and she'll kind of carve her own path and use whoever is kind of useful as much as she needs to.
Yeah. There's I would say there's a lot going on in this game. I touched on before. There's multiple threads. So you've got like Jessie searching for her brother who's in the Bureau of Control, and they're linked to their kind of childhood traumatic event that got them separated. That's linked in with the Hiss. And then Polaris, your guardian angel, is also linked in with this other entity, and it's almost like it's like Destiny, like where you've got like the Hiss, which is the darkness, and then this other force that Polaris is almost like an offshoot of. Is it Hadron? Who is like
Hedron, I think it's called, yeah.
Basically, the Traveler from Destiny, this big white orb type thing.
That's the Traveler. That's literally the Traveler.
Yeah,
Just in a hexagon. That's it.
it's exactly like that. It's like they're almost like their whole thing is that they're all about resonance and kind of sound, and Hadron seems to be like a force of kind of good to a degree. And
It's like positive vibrations, and the hiss is like negative. Like I guess
Yeah.
the opposite reaction.
Yeah. Nothing. Well, to be honest, as much as Polaris helps you, there's nothing that suggests Hadron is particularly good either. Really, it's just an entity again that they've pulled out the astral plane to experiment on, and it's gone awry for them basically. Um, but yeah, there's that, and I mentioned there's the threat of the mold, which creeps into the back half of the game as well. Like you see rooms that are covered in this fungus, and it gets worse and worse as the game goes on. And then there's like this whole sub chapter where you're basically fighting like mold people. It's not far off The Last of Us really. It's like little clicker-esque like beings. And there's like I don't know if you did much of it because a lot of it was in side missions, but there's a huge amount of like side content that is basically about this black mold that is starting to take over vast swathes of the oldest house. And it's almost like, look, if you don't pay attention to this shit, it's going to be almost as bad as the hiss getting out.
Yeah. I touched a bit on it, but I kind of fell out. I kind of went straight to the DLC and stuff, so I didn't do too much of it. And it's there in the DLC at times as well. So it's always like you say, this other entity, just as big a threat and something that shouldn't kind of be ignored.
Yeah, I really like that. It gave a richness to the narrative. I think that it just adds why I like this game. It feels like this isn't just us versus the hiss, and it's very two dimensional. There's a lot going on here. It just so happens that on this given Tuesday, the hiss are the big thing in the room.
Yeah, it's like another day in the office.
Yeah.
That's kind of what it struck to me. That was kind of the impression of the people. It wasn't like, oh my god, we've lost half the office. We need to get outside help. They're just like, oh, okay. We've got these experiments to do. We've got these things to take care of. We're gonna go carry on this. You do your thing. We'll do our thing, and we'll help each other out where we can. Like, always seems to be kind of keep the show going on, keep the ship sailing. Yeah, it's really interesting.
Yeah, like you're right. Everyone takes it like completely in their stride. Either they have been taken over by the hiss and are dead, or they are just like, ah, for fuck's sake, this is going to be so much paperwork to sort things out. It's wild. Again, it kind of ties back to that like that mundane bureaucracy over the top of this fantastical otherworldliness, and it really runs with it in just an awesome way. Really, it's cool. I genuinely. I think this is one of the more interesting games I've played for a long time. As I say, there's not many games that indulge in this kind of little subgenre. I don't know what you call it, but that like X-Files-esque kind of weird and wonderful.
Yeah,
FBI
I think like Twin Peaks, like I said, with Twin Peaks and X-Files, and there's a lot of influences from a lot of different media. I think it would be fair to say that there's one kind of big copying that is been copied from. But everything it does really well. I love the Ocean View Motel.
Yeah, that's such a cool.
That was one of my favorite things.
It's weird because it's like
the motel.
You visit that scene quite a few times. I love the way of getting there. The 3 pulls the light cord. It took me a while to figure that out the first time, despite the sign next to it saying, the rules of 3 apply. It took me like 3 goes around to figure out what I was doing wrong. And I think, in fact, when I was looking through some video to put together for this, I think I captured the first time I came across a pull cord. I pulled it once, nothing happened. Pulled it twice, nothing happened. And then I tried to just like, what the fuck's happening? Do I just wander forward and just fell off a cliff? But then I got back and it's like, the sign. And that's one thing actually I haven't really touched on yet is the signage in this game is really good. Like there's not a lot of, you've got a map that you can view, but in terms of finding your way around, it's primarily through signage in the office and
signs
in the world.
And things. I struggled a lot with some of the signs, more the posters than the signs. The signs themselves was like left to this department or right to this department or left for exit. They were fine. But I think it's because of PS4. A lot of the posters, paintings, pictures, it had to zoom in before it would kind of render. It was kind of in low level of detail. And only when you zoomed in, you got the high level. You're like, okay, I need to do this. Or, okay, that's what this sign says.
There's a little bit of that on PS5, but not to the point where I noticed it being a problem. So maybe there's like a platform type of deal, like you say.
It seemed really strange. Like I mean, one of the Ocean View motels, there was like a painting. Like it didn't seem that detailed of a painting to me. Like I didn't think anything like super detailed. I didn't know why it kind of had to be under. We had to zoom in before I could figure out what was on it and which direction it was facing to sort it out. So that was probably one of the other gripes I had with the game on the PS4. But it wasn't detracting from it. But back to what you're saying about posters, I remember one of the posters said. Don't take staplers out of the office because you don't know what it might be. It might not be a genuine stapler. And it's all about, not taking things out of the office and taking it home with you and stealing office supplies and stuff because, another world entity might take the form of, like you say, a paperclip or a stapler, and then you take it home and then, the world is doomed and stuff. So, yeah, there's loads of little things like that. And, yeah, it's really good, really funny, really interesting.
Well, I mentioned the black mold. There's posters like to say, like, have you washed your hands? Your mold will spread and stuff like that. And just, like, loads of, like little winks and nods to the inside jokes of it.
Yeah, it's like World War II, almost like propaganda posters, like loose lips sink ships, like that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
it's almost that level of kind of.
It's great. It's easily its kind of best feature is all this kind of wild shit that it pulls all the time. But
yeah.
No, it's great. I haven't done the DLC, but I might go back and play it actually, just because I'm intrigued by it all. I did stumble into so you've done the Foundation, like you said, explores the board and Former and all that. The second DLC is AWE, which when it was announced, everyone was like, "Ooh, this is interesting." AWE, Alan Wake experience, but an AWE is also in the context of Control an altered world
event, yeah.
And it turns out no, it is an Alan Wake thing, and I stumbled into it, but I must admit, I never played Alan Wake, so I've got very little attachment to that franchise, so it's probably a little bit lost on me.
Yeah.
But this
I know. I think I played a bit, and I know kind of the basics of it, but I haven't really done that much, and I don't think I probably will go back to it. But yeah, I know there's a lot of the mechanics and the gameplay, or kind of the themes from Alan Wake, like using the light to break the darkness and stuff like that.
Well, I know that this we mentioned before. This is the Remedy video game universe now, like the MCU. But Alan Wake and Control share the same universe. And when I was looking up some bits and pieces to prepare for kind of talking about this tonight, apparently Remedy have a new project set in the same continuity and same universe currently in development or in early stages of development. So yeah, they are gunning for this kind of shared science fiction world. So
I could just imagine like. Jesse Faden being the G-man of the Remedy universe. Like you just see her kind of as you're playing this next game and you're bowling down the highway and she's just kind of there staring at you through the window and it's like, oh shit.
That's what I mean. Like
Bureau of Control, and she's here to run.
This game is there will definitely be a sequel to Control. I can't imagine there won't be. But whether you play as Jesse Faden or not, I don't know. I think it's more likely she will be your boss or somebody, like you say, the G-Man featuring in the game, and it'll be more just wacky.
I think it'd be really interesting to be like a Men in Black thing, where you could just be just two agents or something, and you just kind of
back up to
like
her.
A buddy adventure just within the report back up to her or something. I think that could easily happen.
Yeah, I think that would be cool. Cool. So, I mean, we've talked a lot about this. We've got into spoilers. There's you could just kind of pour over a lot of the details. I mean, this is definitely a game that you probably need to play through and absorb. I think we're both pretty damn positive on it.
Yeah, absolutely. What you are going then? Let's say two things or two of your favorite bits that you liked of the game, and I'll give you my two. We already mentioned the Ashtray Maze, so I think we'll both have that. That's why I did say three, so we'll both have the Ashtray Maze. That was number one. So what's your other two?
Oh God, I probably one of the first kind of bits I was like, shit, this game's cool. It's probably when you go to get the hotline and it's the first time you stumble into the Ocean View Motel, and then just the hotline and the talking to the board for the first time. I was like, what the fuck's going on? This is like way bigger than like what is going on. This is not really what I expected.
And I could have imagined, yeah.
God, I'm trying to think of another. And you know,
I went in completely blind, so I completely agree. Like all this stuff, like I'm glad I didn't go into spoilers and read about this game. I just go in blind and just kind of be open to all these ideas. It's really cool. It's really interesting. I love being kind of fed this kind of narrative and being kind of challenged on perceptions and things like that.
Probably the second cool bit of the game that I, like really stuck with me, or I thought, oh man, this is like a special game. I like this. Is towards maybe just over the halfway point, maybe kind of 2/3 way through the game, you've got to go and find Artie again, the janitor in the depths in the foundation,
Yeah.
to get his. Well, I think it's not to get his Walkman, but he gives you the Walkman to get through the ashtray maze, and just going to his kind of like little den in the bowels of the oldest house. Artie's this weird kind of mystical figure, and you know he's not just a janitor. You know he's not even. It never goes out of his way to say this, but it pretty much like I thought of him as he's not even human. He is like an extra dimensional being of some kind. He's like this guiding hand.
Almost certainly.
And this kind of confirms it. You've got to go to Artie's resting place or something, and you've got to go like you got to jump through a painting into the Ocean View Motel to then get into the janitor's closet there to get to his special place where you find him, and just like that whole sequence, and where you're talking to him, and it kind of finally comes around and like this guy is something a bit more, and it's kind of again just like that tease of more's going on around this world and then at first sight. That was a cool bit, but that leads directly into the ashtray maze as well, which was also awesome, but completely totally opposite.
Cool. Yeah, I liked how I mean, this goes into the narrative of the story. This isn't part of my 2, sorry, but when you kind of go into different places, you get kind of an FMV or a full motion video or live actors kind of in the background of something as you play in the game. So like the Artie thing, like you mentioned, he's on holiday, so he's kind of humming to himself, and there's like pictures of like Finnish forestry and streams and stuff, and he's kind of humming away and singing away and stuff, and you kind of see all that coming around you, and I think that was really cool. I really like that scenario, and I think Artie is almost like an entity that the Federal Bureau of Control use, but he's probably a more positive or a more useful one than kind of the board is. It's almost like the director is his assistant, like we are the janitor's assistant as a director, because he tends to kind of, although the janitor's job is to clean up messes and fix stuff, he is doing that, but on a much more kind of cosmic scale, on a much grander scale. Like
it's like he knows what's going on more than anybody else, and he guides you in this kind of slightly abstract kind of way. He's just a cool character. He's like this weird oddball kind of character who keeps slipping into, like you say, Finnish or some kind of Scandinavian language. And I'll be honest, I didn't have subtitles on, so I was like, should I? What is this man saying? Is he just mumbling? And then when I watched my wife play through the first meeting with him, and there is subtitles, I was like, oh right, he is actually saying things just in a different language, but he talks in such a thick accent that I was like, I'm only just following this. But it's cool. So yeah, what are your two highlights?
So my 2, so I really like the Hotline, so I won't use that one again. I still went back and I listened to all the Hotline videos. I just love the idea of just rigging someone and just getting some weird shit down the line. Maybe I don't know what that says about me, but I just like that, really liked it. Also, Trench is the voice of Max Payne, and the actor is Max Payne as well. So as soon as he started talking on the Hotline, I was like, damn, Max Payne. So that's another reason why I loved it as well.
I never clicked at the time, but it's not Sam Lake because Sam Lake was the face of Max Payne, wasn't he?
Sam Lake was Max Payne, but it's the voice, and in 2 and 3, it's the motion capture guy as well.
Right.
So it's kind of as Max Payne as Max Payne can be. And apparently Casper Darling is Alan Wake as well. I didn't know that till much later on.
Oh, right, okay. No, I didn't know that. But
there is a Remedyverse. So back to my 2 things. I am going back to the Ocean View Motel where you press it 3 times. One of the times you go through the Ocean View Motel again is you're trying to find your brother. And you pull this, I don't know if you had this, but it shit me up, but I've really enjoyed it. You pull the string down and you just see your brother kind of looking at you, and it's just like, what the fuck was that? And how I mentioned about how the game is kind of creepy and how it makes you scared, and kind of when the hiss possess people, they're kind of chanting this kind of cosmic hymn, if you will. And it's really, really, I was playing with headphones, I was like fucking losing my mind. I used to go out my way to shoot these people just to make them show up sometimes, because I was like, god damn, this is fucking nuts, dude. That was probably one of my favorite bits. And I really liked, I'm just trying to think now, I think the fridge is probably the favorite of mine as well.
Yeah.
Just the idea of this guy yelling at you through the intercom, like, "Oh, who are you? Help me out!
I've been here for 2 days. My eyes are starting to hurt.
My eyes.
No, that was cool. The fridge. There's all sorts of weird ones. Like you mentioned the duck before. You see that quite early in the game, and you see the test, but you can you can go and like track it down because it's escaped at some point in the game, and it's like this teleporting duck, and you've got to like it's like a little puzzle to try and predict where it's going to teleport next, so you can grab it. But yeah, there's loads of just. It's all these nice little touches. It's the feeling of the game that makes it special, and yeah, I think this is a game I'd recommend to most people. I don't think everyone's going to love it, but I think if you give it a chance and let the atmosphere soak in, there's so much to like here, and there's not many games that are like this, so it's definitely worth a shot.
No. Yeah, I think this could easily have been transferred or translated into a TV series, but the fact that it's a game is great, and I think a lot of the references of the movies and the TV shows that we mentioned, like X-Files and Twin Peaks, I think if you like those media, you'll definitely enjoy this game as well. Yeah, fully recommend it. I'm glad we got it for free.
It's amazing, isn't it?
And get to go through. Yeah, I
paid £60.
It doesn't always pay off this PlayStation Plus, but I paid off this month.
Completely. I mean, I paid full price £60 for games that I've liked a hell of a lot less than this, and this is a real treat. I would say. I think that's how I would think of it. It's excellent. But yeah, I mean, Control Ultimate Edition. It took me 2 years to play it. Well, nearly 2 years, but managed to play it a good version of it at least. And yeah, I think I'd recommend it to almost anybody. Yeah. So another good one. We've had a couple of good ones lately. We're starting to pick up in the year now and get the releases out. I have purchased, and it's about to unlock in about 3.5 hours. I have purchased Persona 5 Strikers because I played Persona 5 Royal this time last year, and I fucking loved it. But it took me 120 hours to finish, so this is another 50 hours of content to slap bang on top of it. So I think that'll be my next one. Yeah, I don't know if we'll be doing a hot take on that one because it might just be me sitting in a room talking to myself. But I'll see. I'll probably do something with it.
Yeah, I think I need to play Persona 5. I still haven't yet to probably fully appreciate Strikers. So
yeah. So yeah, but hey, get on it, mate. Now you finished Control. It's you can get Persona 5 on the. I think although I played Royal, I would probably recommend Royal. But yeah, that's a whole other debate. But anyway, Control. I think it's a pretty solid recommendation from both of us.